Hey everyone, so recently I released a video talking about how the entire story of One Piece is likely going to end. And to follow up on that, I want to talk about how I believe the storylines for each Straw Hat will end. Because I believe that from the start, with each Straw Hat, Oda planned a concluding storyline or moment in the end game of the story that would essentially be the resolution to their entire character arc. I think generally the way Oda wrote each Straw Hat was to give them a strong developmental starting character arc, so Syrup Village for Usopp, Baratier for Sanji, Arlong Park for Nami, Rum Kingdom for Chopper, Enislabi for Robin and Franky, so on and so forth. And then Oda also planned a longer character need or conflict or arc that would need to be resolved at the end of the story. And to be clear, this isn't as simple as saying each Straw Hat is going to fulfill their dream. For example, Franky's dream is for the Thousand Sunny to make it all the way to the end of the Grand Line. But I don't think that is the closing point for his character. I don't think that is going to be the big character moment that will bring his storyline to a close. So before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more One Piece content every week. Now, I also recommend checking out the full theory on the end of One Piece, as it provides context on a lot that needs to happen for each of the individual Straw Hats, but I will quickly give a summary right here. The theory is that the One Piece is actually the creation of a new sea, a sea that is formed when the Red Line is destroyed at 2 points, at Reverse Mountain and Marijua. The quick reasons for this: first, this fits Madame Charlie's prediction that Luffy would destroy Fishman Island, as Fishman Island is directly under Marijua, where the Red Line would be destroyed. Second, this would create the All Blue, as right now there isn't actually any point in the world where it makes sense for all 4 blues to connect, but it would make sense if the All Blue is an ocean that actually needs to be created, a legend that maybe came out of the Void Century and was always connected to the will of D. On top of this, it fits the idea of how pirates' treasures are classically marked by a giant red X on the map. Since the One Piece is the largest, grandest treasure ever, the secret to the treasure was actually marked all along at the center of a giant X that goes across the entire globe. The ancient weapons that we know of fit this idea as well, as Pluton is a warship that can destroy islands, so is likely the key to being able to destroy sections of the Red Line, and Poseidon can control the Sea Kings, meaning that the Calm Belt could be turned into a peaceful place. As such, with the Red Line opened up and the Calm Belt neutralized, the ocean would finally become one giant, interconnected world with no bounds, and everyone can sail wherever they like. There are a lot of other reasons that this theory makes sense, and I strongly encourage you to watch that video before this one, but those are the bare bones of it, and you'll be able to understand everything in this video from here on, keeping in mind that this is what I believe the One Piece is. So here is how the endings will play out for Robin, Franky, Brook, and Jinbei. Robin's ending is fairly straightforward in my opinion, nothing particularly new to say here. I think the end of her character arc and the completion of her dream are one and the same in this case, basically when she gets to finally put all the pieces together and decipher the true history of the world. That is what she lived for before meeting the Straw Hats. That is what she is set up to do as the only person in the world capable of deciphering the true history. There's nothing much to add here. I would imagine all the pieces will fall into place at Raftel once she gets there, as she herself seems to imply. So definitely expecting Robin's big moment where everything comes together for her is reading that last poneglyph, or poneglyphs, or whatever there might be at Raftel. So Robin, I think we all know where her story is fulfilled. Now, before we get to Franky, which is a really interesting one, I think it's easier if I first talk about Brook actually to kind of give the setup. Brook's dream is to reunite with Laboon, and based on the theory of the destruction of the Red Line, the way Oda set up this little storyline with Brook and Laboon makes perfect sense. From the start, Luffy's adventure was about traveling from the starting point of the Grand Line all the way to the final island, so theoretically circumnavigating the entire globe. Obviously, we've gotten new details about the actual location of the final destination of Raftel since then, so the final goal is no longer necessarily geographically the last island of the Grand Line, which is actually, we've discovered, Lodestar Island, but still the idea is that there will be a complete circumnavigation of the globe by the Straw Hats by the end of the story, because it's been implied multiple times that they're going to go around from start to finish, with Luffy himself saying that the next time he hits the Red Line again, he will finally be Pirate King. So completing the journey brings them back to where they started, Reverse Mountain, which puts them in the perfect position to follow through on this theory that the Red Line needs to be destroyed at 2 points. Because after they've traveled the globe and completed their adventure and found out what the One Piece is, they can now begin the final task of creating the One Piece, and they would be conveniently at one of the 2 main points they need to hit, the first being Reverse Mountain. And the reason this fits so perfectly with what Oda has set up with Brook and Laboon is that from the start, Oda wrote in this story of a whale waiting at this point of Reverse Mountain, unable to travel beyond it, always waiting and waiting for his friends to return to him from beyond the mountain, and he spent his life bashing his head against that wall trying to bring that mountain down. Brook joined the Straw Hats believing that on their ship, he would one day be able to reunite with Laboon. So surprise, surprise, it all comes together with Reverse Mountain finally coming down in front of Laboon's eyes, the great wall he has been trying to destroy for decades, and exactly what he always imagined comes true. The mountain falls and his friend is coming back through it. I think it is pretty much guaranteed that the reunion will happen with the mountain falling and Brook coming back through it. Just the idea of trying to bring the mountain down was planted so far back. It is far more dramatic than Brook coming all the way back around from the New World back through Paradise to slowly sail back to Laboon from the opposite direction from far away. And most importantly, even Brook seems to believe that he will get to see Laboon once he completes the journey through the New World. Obviously, Brook can't know that this would only be possible if they destroy Reverse Mountain, but the point is that when Oda is dropping certain phrases like that, it does suggest it's more likely that Brook's story is going to somehow complete once they get to that finish line of Reverse Mountain, which suggests to me that the reunion will be made possible by the destruction of the Reverse Mountain at the end of their journey. Now, Brook is the one Straw Hat who I could not think of an active close to their character arc, meaning with every other Straw Hat I can imagine big moments where each Straw Hat is able to actively achieve something or do something that closes out their character storyline. So Nami getting Luffy to Raftel, or Chopper curing Luffy, or Robin deciphering the true history, things like that, things where they're actively doing something. Brook is the only Straw Hat who I feel like I can only imagine a passive moment to close out his story, in that he would get to reunite with Laboon, and likely we get all sorts of emotional stuff out of that, but nothing I can think of for him that is really an active moment or achievement. So I do wonder if Oda has something planned for Brook that I'm not thinking of, but I'll just leave it at that for the moment. As far as I can tell, Brook's character will be fulfilled in a sense after he reunites with Laboon. And that brings me to Franky. As I've kept talking and talking about how Reverse Mountain needs to be destroyed, but the question is how? Well, Pluton makes a lot of sense for doing the job, as it is an ancient weapon capable of destroying islands, and I do expect Pluton to be fired at some point in the story. It is a pretty gigantic Chekhov's gun, after all. And on top of this, I would also expect the Straw Hats to be the ones to destroy Reverse Mountain themselves, as the story of Brook and Laboon almost makes it so that they have to be the ones who do it. If, like, hypothetically, Blackbeard was the one who gets his hands on Pluton and blows up Reverse Mountain before the Straw Hats get there, then that basically ruins any sort of magical moment for Laboon, getting to see the wall he's been bashing his head against for years coming down and his friends coming through it like he always dreamed of. Instead, it would be like the Blackbeard Pirates or something. It makes a lot more sense to me that the Straw Hats get to the end of their journey, discover the secrets of the world at Raftel and how to create the One Piece, and start with the first step of destroying Reverse Mountain, when they are already pretty much right there, near the end of the New World. But how do the Straw Hats destroy Reverse Mountain? How do you go about getting a Pluton? It's not like they're exactly lying around. I think this is where Franky's blueprints come into play. A quick recap of the story of those blueprints. Pluton is a warship constructed centuries ago. When it was created, the shipwrights who made it were worried that nothing could stop it except for another Pluton. As such, they kept the blueprints for Pluton and passed it down through the generations, so that another Pluton could be made if the original Pluton was ever used for evil. Kind of the same reason why every country wants to have a nuke nowadays. The only thing that deters a nuke is another nuke. So we have Pluton hidden somewhere in the world right now. The location of it was supposedly on the Poneglyph in Alabasta. Actually, supposedly the Pluton itself was in Alabasta according to Crocodile, but he may have been wrong on that, we don't know for sure yet. And then we had the blueprints for Pluton, so a second one could be made, but Franky destroyed those blueprints. As if that really matters though, because Franky is one of the best, if not the best shipwrights in the world today, there is no way he doesn't have those blueprints saved in the back of his mind. Now, why do I believe that Franky will be making Pluton, essentially a second Pluton? Well, if we accept that the Straw Hats will be destroying Reverse Mountain with Pluton, why can't they just find the existing Pluton? Well, because first of all, that would require another trip to find Pluton that would extend the story, basically another story arc to find Pluton, especially if Pluton is all the way back in Alabasta like Crocodile believed. Second, ever since the idea of 2 Plutons was planted, the idea that another one could be created, I would imagine it's more likely that there would be some evil faction, maybe the Blackbeard Pirates, maybe the world government, that would get their hands on the existing Pluton, which would then require the creation of that second Pluton to counter it, like the shipwrights believed and planned for all along. Third, it feels a little strange if the Straw Hats were to simply find a pre-existing, the pre-existing greatest weapon of mass destruction of the world and basically just walk into it and acquire absolute power that simply. It would make more sense to me if this is something earned on their part, thanks to their shipwright building them an equivalent weapon from scratch. And really, by far, the most important reason I believe that their Pluton will be built, they're not just going to find the pre-existing Pluton, is simply looking at Franky's character and what seems clearly, blatantly set up for him from his backstory. So if you go back and read Franky's backstory, at the crux of it is the right and wrong of creating weapons. That is the core question of it. Franky creates battleships that are ultimately used to cause damage, which leads to Tom going to prison. Now, what Franky takes away from this at first is that he was wrong for creating weapons and that he will never create battleships again. However, what Tom teaches him is that it is not wrong to create a weapon, it is not wrong to create a battleship. What matters at the end of the day is what these weapons are used for. Nothing is inherently good or evil just for existing. This is a lesson Franky has to later teach Robin, that it is not a crime just to exist. And by the end of Enies Lobby, Franky has learned to forgive himself for creating those battleships. So, the idea is planted right there. It is not a crime for a weapon to be created, nothing inherently good or bad about that. It's how it is used in the end that matters. On top of this, the greater looming issue throughout the Enies Lobby arc is the existence of this weapon Pluton, a weapon so powerful that its creators were worried it would be the end of the world if it came into being. That's why keeping the blueprints to create another one is so important. Throughout the arc, everyone is scared of how terrifying Pluton is, but at the same time, there is this developing lesson that is being woven throughout the arc that it is not wrong for a weapon to be created, it is how it is used. There is a reason the shipwrights believed that having the blueprints to Pluton continue to exist was right, because they believed that another weapon could be created for the sake of protecting people, because as strong as Pluton was, in the right circumstances, the weapon could be used for good. And that is what Franky ultimately had passed down to him. First, the blueprints to the most powerful battleship of all time, passed down through generations of shipwrights to be used only when necessary to protect people. And second, the lessons from Tom that no weapon, no battleship is inherently evil. It is never evil to just create a battleship, it is what is done with it afterwards that matters. So Franky's story began with him making battleships that inadvertently caused harm. Then Franky had to learn that it is not wrong to create battleships as long as the will and the choices of the creator are correct. Franky then got the blueprints to the world's greatest battleship, passed down through generations of shipwrights to be created when the world needed to be protected. And Franky's story will end with him creating that battleship as a necessity not only to combat the existing Pluton and protect the world, but also to aid Luffy in becoming Pirate King by destroying the Red Line and creating a new open free world. So yes, Franky's dream, his dream, is for his ship, the Thousand Sunny, to make it to the end of the Grand Line, but that is a passive dream. It is something that will simply happen as he sails with the crew. But the moment that everything from his past will be resolved, the moment that he will rise to the occasion as the last of this long line of shipwrights, is the moment where he will create one final battleship to end all battleships. Only this time, it will be with the right intent and the right purposes and the right choices. I wouldn't be surprised if it is really just one final massive upgrade for the Thousand Sunny, rather than the creation of a new ship from scratch entirely, since I can't really imagine the Straw Hats getting on board a new ship besides the Thousand Sunny at this point. I think even just the fact that something like the Gaon Cannon exists and is completely unique to the Straw Hats ship could be a bit of a preview into the upgrade into Pluton, a ship with a cannon that can destroy islands. Not to mention the fact that even just the moment that Franky was given Pluton's blueprints, he teased the idea of what if he just made it himself, and if you could trust what would come of that. So that is how I feel Franky's story ends. And lastly, we have Jinbei. I feel like the gist of Jinbei's ending may be something to do with helping bringing together fishmen and the humans, maybe integrating fishmen into human society, or helping humans trust fishmen, but what exactly he would do to ensure that is hard to guess. Obviously, I don't think Jinbei single-handedly can bring fishmen and humans together, but maybe just the fact that a fishman was part of the Straw Hat crew who liberated the world from the Celestial Dragons may be a big part of it. Maybe it's something more specific. Maybe there is some act that he does during the battle that helps show human what fishmen are like and that they can be trusted. maybe it's leading the Fishman people, the entire Fishman army, into battle alongside the humans so that Fishman and humans are fighting together. I don't know. I like to think he will play a big role in bringing Fishman more respect and acceptance by the end of the story. However, I don't have anything specific that I can think of for him. So if you guys have ideas, then please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, share, and subscribe. And you can support me on Patreon to get my extended thoughts on this and all future topics. Talk to y'all later.